Let's go ahead and jump into some 4 important interview tips as it relates to your communication. So thinking to yourself, what am I communicating to the interviewer? What am I communicating? Okay, the first way we communicate is through our body language. This is the first thing the interviewer is going to see about you, or kind of first impressions about you, is your body language. And as part of that, we talked about going into interviews or going into these high stress situations and doing some power posing before. Okay, so that power posing is being strong, being confident, kind of shaping your body to be able to help shape your mind, and to help shape your mind to feel more confident and powerful, so that you can go into those situations with that greater confidence. So that's something to remember. Now your dress. Your dress is what you're communicating first, is how are you presenting yourself in your dress and your grooming. So you want to always dress appropriately for that interview. Now we've talked about different areas of body language, such as eye contact, smiling creates that more personable feel. A firm handshake just, again, communicates that confidence and that sureness about you. And then holding your body strong through the interview process. Okay, as you're sitting there, making sure that you have good posture, that you're not fiddling with your hands too much, or have any kind of nervous twitches or anything during that interview process. But that you hold your body strong, that you maintain that eye contact, that you continue to smile as appropriate through that job interview. Okay, practicing this will be very helpful as you go into job interviews. Practice the way you're going to hold yourself and the way you're going to present yourself, and it will help you in the actual event of the interview itself. Okay, the second way we are communicating to that interviewer, first through our body language and then through our speech. Okay, this is the whole point of improving your English pronunciation and fluency, is because if you get into an interview situation and you start speaking and the interviewer really can't understand you, or it's difficult, that communication is difficult for them in any way, guess what? That interview has died in their mind. It's done. Because that communication skill is the #1 skill that interviewers or employers are looking for in their employees. So we have to make sure that that speech is nice and clear. Now, as you go through the course, you're learning all these different sounds and rhythm and how to bring these all together. In the setting of an interview, you are not going to be able to remember all of those details. You have a lot you're having to think about in terms of the questions they're asking you, and kind of all the stress and that is a part of that situation. So really, the 3 things that I want you to remember about your speech are those 3 easy tips. So come back to slowing down a little bit. You don't want to be so slow that it's going to halt the interview process, but you have to slow down. A lot of times when we're nervous about something, then we start speaking really quickly and we get really excited, and that's when fluency and that's when that clarity decreases. So you have to keep a slow, steady pace to the point where your mouth can get into position and you can speak clearly. So slowing down, moving your mouth, making sure that mouth is engaged, and again, before going into the interview, having some kind of warm-up, like stretching your mouth and having some kind of warm-up routine like we've talked about previously will be helpful in that. And then speak up. Make sure your voice is nice and strong through that interview. Okay, so body language is the first thing. Your spoken English, the way that you're speaking, is going to be that second way that you're communicating. Okay, so those are the 2 ways you're communicating at first. And then as we get into kind of what you're communicating, that becomes a big part of how you're communicating with the employer. So let's take a deeper look at that. So the third tip that I have for you in this interview process is do your research. Okay, so that means understanding the company's mission, their culture, their core values. When you really understand a company and those core values, then you can start thinking about how do I fit in with the company? How do I fit in with those core values of the company? How can I contribute to that mission and that purpose of the company? All right. I want you to really know the position that you're interviewing for. So doing your research and understanding that position and being able to communicate that you understand the position and ways that you are going to be a help in that position. Okay? So that research, and not only researching it, but practicing it becomes critically important, so that as you're in that situation, that you have the words, you know kind of how to phrase things, and you have the words to be able to communicate that very, very clearly. Okay? Like we've talked about before, fake it until you become it. Okay? There is situations where it's, you know, you're doing your research and you have that insight into the company, and you might feel like, oh, this is a stretch for me, because we don't usually interview for things that we feel like, oh, I've got this is no big deal. It's usually a stretch for you. And that's okay. You stretch and you interview for those positions that will help you develop and grow as a person. So don't feel like, oh, I don't belong in this position. Feel like, yes, I belong in this position, and I will be great at this. And even if you have to feel like, yeah, I'm kind of faking it until I become it, that's okay. All right, the fourth tip for you is to have an attitude of how are you going to help the company. We talked a little bit about this in doing your research, but you don't want to be going into it into that interview with the attitude of how is this company going to help me? That's not what an employer or an interviewer wants to hear. It's how are you going to help the company? How are you going to align with their core values and help drive that mission? Okay, so as you practice and prepare for these interviews, you want to practice the way that you're going to communicate that. How can you communicate that you are there for the interest of the company, and that you're going to do all you can to help that company in their mission and their purpose? Okay, so think through those things, and those are the things that I want you to be practicing.